So you're trying to mix your tracks, but they still sound amateur, messy, or flat, and it's taking a very long time to get to where you actually are happy, if ever, even when you're following all the advice out there. Here's the truth. You're not mixing wrong because you don't have enough tools. You're mixing wrong because you don't know what to focus on. So in this video, I'm going to show you a simple, proven mixing process I've used to help thousands of producers clean up their tracks and get signed to labels like Purified, Colorize, Sekora, and many more, and start sounding professional without buying expensive plugins or overcomplicating everything. Let's go. All right, let's cut through all the noise here. Mixing isn't about buying expensive gear, using 15 plugins per channel, or spending 40 hours tweaking every frequency to death. Most producers think they're not good at mixing, but the truth is they're just doing too much of the wrong stuff. Here's what mixing actually is: volume balance, frequency separation, space, width and depth, correction of issues, polishing and enhancing, and that is it. And guess what? You can do all of this with the stock plugins and with a bit of taste. I guarantee you already have everything you need. And even now, I still use the stock plugins on every track, not because I'm cheap, but because they work and they're super easy to use. More importantly, mixing isn't complicated if you follow a process, nor does it take a long time. Though this is the exact workflow I use every single day in my own productions with client mixdowns and inside the program where we teach this to artists. It works, period. Let's dive into it. All right, we're going to move fast here, but remember, the goal of mixing isn't to do more things, it's to make intentional decisions that enhance your track and keep your vision intact. Let's go. Step 1, the volume balance. Start here. It's 80% of the mix, and I'm not even kidding. Get your faders right and at the right level before you even think about touching anything else. Step 2, high passing and correction. High pass every single sound that doesn't need low-end energy to allow space for your kick and bass. Then clean up any harshness and masking or muddy frequencies. Step 3, polishing. So adding compression, saturation, distortion, subtle stereo effects, only if it's necessary and makes the sound sit better. This is where taste and restraint matter. Step 4, panning, stereo width, and depth. So creating space, think about where things live in the stereo field and depth field. Mixing is like filling a three-dimensional cube. There's up and down, left and right, forwards and backwards. This is where we're focusing on left and right, forwards and back. You use reverb, delay, width tools, but here you don't want to go crazy. You want to keep it intentional. And once all of this processing is done, rebalance your levels to reflect how things have shifted. This locks everything in before mastering. However, some really important things. Firstly, don't work in isolation for too long. Always mixed in context. It's about the bigger picture. Secondly, every move you make must serve a purpose. If you don't know why you're doing something and don't have a good reason to, then don't do it. And thirdly, group processing is your friend. It leads to much better cohesion between parts, things sound better, and actually it's way more CPU efficient even if you're on an old computer. I'll show you this with a live demo in the next section, and you can grab our free mixing PDF in the description. Now, just to show you this process as well, a bit more visually, this is what you would do on every individual channel. So firstly, you're going to want to high pass stuff because remove any frequencies that are unnecessary for the sound. It's also worth noting that some of these steps are optional and you have to decide whether or not they're necessary, such as compression. You might not need to compress, but generally you're going to ask yourself, does this need to be more punchy, or are there volume inconsistency levels that I need to smooth out, where you'd use smooth compression? You have 3 choices: punch, smooth, or no compression if not necessary. Then sound coloring, again optional, but I pretty much do it on every sound, is to then give your sounds a grit, a flavor, a character. So tools like saturation, distortion, overdrive, tape, thick crushing, these are all your friends here. Then you would think about stereo enhancing. So things like chorus, phasers, flanges, micro detuners, or even adding detune and unison on the source sound as well. That would already have solved this stereo enhancing part. Again, optional. You would probably not do this on things like your sub bass or kicks. Again, intention is key here. Next up is depth, so things like delays, reverbs, spatial effects that are going to create that sense of forward and backward within the mix. Again, most elements are going to have this to some degree. Some, such as your sub bass, would probably never have this on as well. And then finally, side chaining. So thinking about how this element is meant to interact with other elements in the mix, especially the kick. Everything is going to be sidechained to the kick, but then you might want to sidechain it to other elements such as vocals if they're in your track. Again, intention is key here. Same thing with the group processing. So pretty much the same order on groups. So compression at the start, only if you really need to do it. So glue compression. Generally when sounds comes together, you might want to compress them a little bit so that they sound more cohesive. But then group coloring. So you can add saturation, distortion, overdrive, and tape to the group. So all of your drums could go through the same saturation, or all of your plucks, and so on and so forth. They'll all sound cohesive. Then all of your plucks, for example, can go through the same depth and reverb effects. They'll all sound cohesive rather than having individual delays on every single element. Just put them all through the same thing. And again, side chaining as well. Now, on group and buses as well, it's worth noting that certain things, like if you're doing it on the bass, for example, like you would put the stereo width component not on the sub component, nor on the group, because you don't want the sub going through it, but you would do this on, say, the width layer of your bass, or the main bass, just not on the sub. So again, like, you are essentially just doing every single step you do here, but some of the steps here will be on individual channels and not on the groups. So for example, if you have a group of multiple plucks, you don't add this whole chain on the individual ones and then also on the group. Some of these steps might be on the individual channels, and then just on the group, this is where you add these to make them all cohesive. I hope that makes sense. Okay, here we have a track where there is literally zero processing on any of these instruments here. It's all just literally the stock sound coming out of a synth or just audio. Everything is set to 0. Take a listen. It's going to sound terrible. Completely cluttered, completely unbalanced. Now, I've already grouped my elements here, so all of my drums go to a drum bus, all my basses go to a bass bus, and all of, like, similar sounds go together, such as, like, vocal atmospheres. Anyway, first thing I want to do is set my kick to -12. So here it's coming out as 0 on the group. Let's set this to -12. There you go, -12. Then I would probably set my bass to around 2 to 3 dB below the kick peak. Let's go with 3, so let's set it down here. Roughly, bear in mind this isn't being compressed. Okay, now what you then do is go sequentially and balance all of the sounds using your anchor points. So kick set to -12. Nothing is going to be louder than the kick in the drum group. Here, actually, it's set to 0. That means none of my drums should be louder than 0. Then with the bass, this is going to be my instrumental anchor point, so nothing should be louder than the bass comes out at. I'm going to go ahead and balance this. What you want to do is just set everything to 0, like so. Just drag all the faders down, highlight everything, bring it all down to 0. Same with all the drums, and then start bringing in elements one at a time. Listen in context. Do it in order of importance. I usually do the kick and bass balance first, then I'll do the rest of the drums, then I'll start doing all of the melodic elements. I'm going to go ahead and do this, but listen to the difference it makes. I'll be right back in 1 second. All right, I've gone and set the balance. Take a listen now. Night and day difference. I've literally not done anything other than set the levels. Now, you need to use both, mostly your ears, but use your eyes. But it's kind of like if you're flying an aeroplane and you're looking at your altimeter and your altimeter says you're fine, but you literally see you plummeting into the ground out of the cockpit window. Obviously, you need to do something. It's kind of the opposite with music. Like, you need to train your ears. We'll talk about a totally free way that you can do this efficiently, and very quickly. But it's the exact opposite. Use your ears mostly, but use your eyes as well to be like, wait, that's super loud. There's something wrong is going on here. But yeah, use mostly your ears. And like, yeah, hopefully you guys can see how much of a difference that's made. That's literally just volume balance, nothing else so far. Okay, now we go into the actual polishing side of things. Okay, for this exact same track, let's go ahead and polish up the bass. So let's take a listen. Remember, in context of the bass, we have actually two components to our bass. There's these like raw layers, which sound like this. And then there's also the rolling bass, which is consisting of two layers, the sub and the rolling part. There is actually, I'd lied, there was a little bit of processing, just splitting the sub and the roller, but that's essentially it. It's the same sound, just with sub and main. But what we're going to do, let's just focus now on this rolling bass, because this is an interesting example of group processing. So for example, on the sub, I absolutely don't want to add any stereo width. I want this to be mono, clean, and down the middle and consistent. So it already is a little bit stereo. So for this sub bass, I just want that to be totally mono, but like a lot of the processing is going to take place on the group. But on the rolling bass here, the main bass, you could add things like stereo widening effects. So it already is stereo. You could add something like a chorus, but a lot of the magic is going to take place on the group. I'm going to add, for example, we could add a chorus. That's very extreme. Let's just have a tiny bit of dry wet there. I'm going to give it a little bit more stereo width. However, when the sounds come together, remember our workflow. You can download the flow as a PDF, links in the description. But when sounds come together, let's add a little bit of compression. This is a punchy sound, so I want to retain the punch. So slow attack, quick release. And let's just look for about 2 to 3 dB of gain reduction. Add back in what we took out. Sounds good to me. Now let's add some EQ on the group. Quite a lot of resonance here. Remove that. I can hear that immediately because I've trained my ears. This is why you should. We'll talk about that later in the video. Talk about how you can do that later. But then I might want to add some grit. So let's add Ableton's Raw. I'm going to use just completely stock effects here. So I like the multiband mode because you can do a different distortion on low, mids, and highs. On the lows, let's use tube preamp. On the mids, let's use something a bit more aggressive like trifold. On the highs, noise injection. That sounds good. I'm probably not going to add any reverb to this. I could add reverb on the main component. Let's do that. I'm going to use vintage verb, even though I said I would do only stock, but I love vintage verb, whatever. You can add any reverb. Really short reverb. And let's just do it in parallel. Put out those lows and highs. Really subtle. Give it a tiny little bit of space. That sounds cool. That's basically it. I'm going to keep it totally stock. I like to use Shaper Box for sidechaining. We have videos on specifically that if you want to check them out on the channel. But let's just use a compressor for now. Sidechain this to the kick. There you go. And just have it on the lows. There we go. Got a nice little ducking there. Cool, easy. So yeah, that's how you do it on a group. Just remember, like, certain things you don't want to have on certain elements, such as like chorus and reverb. Definitely didn't want that on the sub, but I added that onto the main part here. And then on like the group where all the magic is happening, I added all the group effects. So compression, distortion, a little bit of EQ to tighten it up, and then sidechaining. As long as you go through each of these steps and have a very, and like ask yourself, am I going to do this on the group or am I going to do it on the individual layers? Why am I doing this? Do I have a good reason to? And you go through each of them and you go, okay, am I going to add this? Yes or no? What's the reason for that? Then you can't really go wrong with this workflow. It's literally foolproof. Let's polish up the lead. Sounds super dry. Let's add some context to the drums. So let's high pass first. Get rid of all that stuff we don't need. Looks like the volume is quite inconsistent. So let's add a glue compressor. You kind of just see on the, like the, here, it jumps up quite loud sometimes. So let's just catch those peaks with a shortish attack, put a longer release so it's not as aggressive. Yeah, there you go. Gonna keep it a little bit more consistent volume-wise. Nice. Let's add some saturation, distortion, or overdrive to give it some color. Again, let's just use raw again, multi-band mode. There's not really anything in the lows, so on the mids, let's add polynomial. On the highs, noise injection. Take the dry wet down a little bit to make that a little bit less aggressive. Again, intention. I felt that was too aggressive. Turn the dry wet down. Still get the color, just not as hard. I'm going to actually then add an EQ afterwards, because whenever you add saturation, distortion, and overdrive, you add harmonics. Let's just cut out everything that we introduced. A lot of harshness here. Just tame this peak there a little bit. Super highs. Now let's add some like chorus. Let's add some stereo width. Some fully wet. That's nice. Let the dry wet down. Cool. Now let's think about depth. Let's add echo. I'm going to do this in parallel. We have the echo here. This is going to add a huge difference. Let's maybe roll off, create some separation here. That's nice. Let's just drop the amount down. And some reverb. Use vintage verb again. Love it. You can use any reverb. Do it in parallel. Cut out the lows, cut out the highs. Do longer tail. Reverb still. That's nice. And let's just copy that side chain over from the rolling bass. Be a little bit lazy, copy it on the lead. Sounds great to me. Now, yeah, you would go through this process on every instrument, and I'll show you what the finished result looks like once you've done it. You'd go through this on every instrument, every group, until everything's done, and then you would balance it. Let me show you what it sounds like when it's all balanced. I went ahead and did the full mix. This is what it sounds like now. This is what we started with. So yeah, night and day difference, my friends. So look, you just follow that process, be very intentional with everything you do. But at the end of the day, none of this matters if you don't actually know what you're listening for. You wouldn't walk into a gym for the first time and expect to bench 150 kilos. Same thing here, right? You've got to train your ears, right? You can use tools like Sound Gym. I'm going to put a link in the description. It's totally free. There is a paid version, which is really good. You don't need the paid version. They have specific games for helping you with certain parts of mixing, like Peak Master, probably one of the most important ones for EQ and frequency range hearing. DB King is for levels, which is going to be really important in the volume balance, like Pan Girl for panning, stereo width, and all sorts of other ones that you can play. But like, if you do a little bit of this every day, I'm talking like 5-10 minutes a day for a month, you will see huge improvements. If you are consistent with this, you do it for 6 months, a year, you will be a completely different producer. Trust me on this. The reason why I can hear problems immediately is because I spent time doing this. I went to the gym, I trained. You're not just going to magically wake up and be amazing at hearing frequencies. You have to do the work and train. Training is only half of it. The other half is the intention and really understanding the how and why behind the tools. Every move you make should answer this question. Why am I doing this? Mixing is about solving problems and enhancing ideas, not about ticking plugin boxes. Your track is a painting, not a collection of pretty brushstrokes. Zoom out, mix in context, serve the bigger picture. So if you've been overcomplicated mixing, now you actually know what matters. Forget the plugin circus, forget chasing pro sound with gear you don't need. Just follow this process, mix with intention, and keep it simple. If you want to go even deeper and get direct help from us, DM us X22 on Instagram, and we'll show you exactly how we can help producers like you start finishing tracks, mixing them to professional standards, releasing music on great labels, and leveling up fast-growing audience, making music their career. Or you can grab the free courses and the mixing checklist in the description. We actually have a full mixing course for free in our free school community that you can join right now. Link is in the description. And go ahead and start stacking wins. Your move. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe.